It'll take you directly to the forum agenda page on the website where you will find all the information for session times, locations, and speakers. If you'd like to Wi-Fi access, please use network Hilton Honors and code IPEM 2026. Now, to kick off those exciting 2 days of conversation, it's my great pleasure to introduce Thomas R. Hardy. Mr. Hardy serves as the Deputy Director and Chief Operating Officer of the U.S. Trade and Development Agency, performing the duties and responsibilities of the agency's director. He leads the agency's global efforts to advance high-quality infrastructure projects that strengthen U.S. national security, creates export opportunities for U.S. goods and services, and support U.S. job creation. USTDA is the U.S. government's first mover on critical infrastructure development abroad, advancing the shared strategic priorities of the U.S. and its overseas partners by deploying U.S. technological expertise. He was previously appointed by President Trump to serve as the USTDA's acting director from 2017 to 2020, where he helped transform the agencies to meet the demands of the rapidly evolving global environment. Mr. Hardy has also held multiple leadership positions at the agency, including directors of policy and program management, chief of staff and country manager of the East Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa regions. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Hardy to the stage.
Good morning and welcome to Tokyo. I want to begin by thanking our co-hosts for this next 2 days, the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry here from Japan, and the U.S. National Energy Dominance Council being led by Secretary Burgum, who you will hear from shortly. It is an honor to welcome heads of state, ministers, CEOs, and business leaders from across the Indo-Pacific region for this dynamic 2-day program. The Indo-Pacific is expected to see some of the fastest growth in energy demand anywhere in the world, making reliable energy a defining issue for both economic growth and our national securities. Energy security is more than just economic security, it's national security. And the United States is committed to support our partners and allies across the region to ensure greater energy security within our economies. Working together, we'll unlock investment and build resilient supply chains while ensuring the region's energy future is built on trusted partnerships, transparent markets, and secure infrastructure. This forum reflects the United States' commitment to working with our partners across the Indo-Pacific region on our shared energy security priorities. The United States is bringing a whole-of-government approach to this forum, led by Secretary Burgum, with leaders from the State Department, Department of Interior, Department of State, the Export-Import Bank, and the U.S. Trade and Development Agency. A central feature of IPEM is the partnership between government and private sector. Energy companies, infrastructure developers, financiers, and technology leaders are here because private sector investment will power the solutions we need to power business and provide energy for our people. Over the next 2 days, the forum will serve as a platform to announce and advance major energy investments, partnership, and commercial deals. As the U.S. government's first mover on infrastructure development, USTDA is proud to sponsor this forum. Our mission is simple: to accelerate the development of infrastructure projects by funding the early stage project preparation that is needed to attract financing for infrastructure projects in emerging markets around the world. We transform ideas into bankable, real-world energy projects, and we look forward to hearing your ideas in the coming days. The Indo-Pacific energy future will be shaped by the partnerships that are made here this week. Together, we have an opportunity to deliver reliable and affordable power to industry and our people that will drive prosperity and shared economic growth for everyone. I want to thank you all for joining us here in Tokyo for the Indo-Pacific Energy Security Ministerial and Business Forum. It's now my pleasure to introduce one of our co-hosts from the Government of Japan, the Honorable Akasawa-san, Minister of Economy, Trade, and Industry. Minister Akasawa-san has served as the Minister of Economy, Trade, and Industry since October 2025. Prior to his current role, he served as Minister in charge of Economic Revitalization and the Minister of State and Economic and Fiscal Policy. It is my pleasure to introduce and welcome Minister Akasawa-san.
Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining the Indo-Pacific Energy Security Ministerial and Business Forum. I am Ryosei Akazawa, Minister of Economy, Trade, and Industry, Japan, but I suppose far better known as Minister in charge of Tariff. Right, thank you. Asia imports more than 80% of the crude oil that passes through this strait. We therefore may suffer from severe impact. Today's forum brings together distinguished heads of states, energy ministers, and business leaders from both energy producing and energy consuming countries across the region. The forum provides a perfect platform for all of us to jointly identify issues and work on practical solutions to the unprecedented challenge to energy security. We, the directly affected region, have an important role in sending a clear message to the world that we are effectively responding to the challenge and making best efforts to stabilize energy markets. In some Asian countries, long queues have formed at gas stations as people seek scarce fuel. Exports of oil products have stopped. Japan, too, relies on the strait for more than 90% of our crude oil imports. To protect the daily lives of our people and economic activity from potential risks, the government of Japan has been taking proactive measures. We decided to release our oil reserves to fill our supply gap and support global market stability. Furthermore, I discussed the matter with the Executive Director of the International Energy Agency and participated in the G7 Energy Ministers meeting. I emphasized the severe impact in nature and stressed the need for a collective action at global scale. Working jointly with the United States, we led the discussion in the G7 and IEA, which resulted in the largest collective oil stock release in its history, amounting 400 million barrels. Likewise, I'm sure that the leaders from both energy producing and energy consuming countries gathering today are vigorously making their own efforts. Our task here is to bring our initiative together and transform them into a collective and powerful response to stabilize global energy markets. We can achieve this in this forum. Let's broaden our horizon beyond immediate emergency measures. The long-term and strategic choices we make today on how we develop resilient energy systems and supply chains will shape the Indo-Pacific region's energy security for decades to come. The Indo-Pacific region is the engine of global economic growth. Energy demand will increase substantially, along with their economic growth, digitalization, AI transformation, and spreading air conditioners. Building abundant, affordable, clean, and resilient energy supply system is crucial to meet the robust demand. Working closely with the United States, Japan will bring solutions and contribute to strengthening energy security throughout the region. I'd like to highlight 4 key concepts in navigating this journey. First is diversification. The lessons learned from the case in the Strait is that overdependence on single solution, whether on energy source, supplier, transport route, or supply chain, will make us weak. Diversification has always been and will remain central to energy security. In the Indo-Pacific region, where energy demand will grow significantly, we must build a diversified energy system and achieve the triple breakthrough of economic growth, energy security, and clean energy. The second is abundant energy. Energy demand will contribute to rise with the expansion of AI and data centers. A stable supply of abundant energy is indispensable. In this regard, the United States, the world's largest energy producer, has shown a firm commitment to unleash their energy abundance to Asia. Japan truly welcomes such commitment that brings great reassurance to our markets. Third is energy technology. Japan is a department store of energy technologies, possessing full spectrum of energy technologies and innovations. Japan and the United States have jointly worked on a wide range of energy projects, such as LNG, nuclear, power grids, geothermal energy, and more. By sharing these technologies and experience across Asia, we can help strengthen regional energy security together. Fourth is finance. As energy infrastructure continues to expand across the Indo-Pacific, the region's finance needs will grow substantially. One challenge is that certain sectors, such as nuclear and LNG, require large-scale investment with long payback periods, making it difficult for private actors alone to commit. It is therefore essential that public and international financial institutions step up to meet the growing finance needs. I am encouraged that the World Bank, JBIC, and the US Exim are participating in this forum. I look forward to active discussions about the important role of the public sector. You have all gathered from East and West today, here in Tokyo. Japan serves as the connecting hub between the United States and the Asian region. As a trusted partner, Japan has worked closely with our friends in the United States and across Asia to build resilient and prosperous economy and society. We will keep contributing to regional and global energy security by providing our technology, finance, and human resources. I hope that this forum will lead to many concrete ideas, actions, and projects. I wish all participants a highly productive and rewarding time here. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Rakosawa-san. Let me take a point of personal privilege and welcome the Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, Lee Zeldin, who is a member of President Trump's cabinet and a key member of the National Energy Dominance Council. So sorry for leaving you off the list, but thank you very much for joining us, Administrator Zeldin. It's now my pleasure to introduce Secretary Doug Burgum, the 55th Secretary of the Department of Energy and the Chair of the National Energy Dominance Council. He's a former two-term governor of the great state of North Dakota. He has an illustrious career in technology, investor investing. And in his role as the chair of the National Energy Dominance Council, he leads efforts to expand domestic energy and mineral production, speed up federal permitting, and leverage public lands for economic development. Secretary Burgum, it's a pleasure. Thank you for leading the U.S. delegation to the IPEM Forum. It's a pleasure to welcome you on the stage this morning. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Yeah, let's try that again. Good morning. Hey, great to have you all here, and I want to lead with gratitude. And let me start with Tom. Thanks for the nice introduction, but thanks for everybody at your organization for pulling this together. Just acknowledged my fellow cabinet member, Lee Zeldin, who's doing, he's going to be closing out today with remarks, but doing the greatest amount of smart and capable deregulation ever conducted, I think, ever in the history of the country. So make sure you stick around for that, helping accelerate your investments in a productive way. So greatly appreciate, Lee, you being here, but appreciate the work you and your team are doing. Amazing stuff. And then, of course, in the audience, we have representatives from 17 different countries that are here. We also have the presidents of 3 of our COFA states. This is the Compact of Free Association. We got Palau, the Republic of the Marshall Islands, the Federated States of Micronesia. But let's, for all of the folks that are officials, if you're an official from another country, could you just stand up, please? And whether you're a president, a minister, a staff person, you're one of those 17 countries? What, are you all lobbyists? What? No, come on, stand up. There's more than 2 people here. Come on, stand up. Don't be bashful. Don't be bashful if you're here. But anyway, thank you for being here for the ministerial part of this, and appreciate everything that all of you are doing. So gratitude to you. And then Minister Akazawa, thank you for kicking things off this morning. Thank you for being here. Thanks for the incredible partnership. I want to thank our Ambassador Glass is here. Ambassador of the U.S. doing a fantastic job. Give him a hand. And across the team that we have, for Lee and I leading this delegation, it's so fantastic. But in addition to USDA, we've got folks, a bunch of great leaders here from the Department of Energy, including 2 assistant secretaries, Housefite and Robertson. They're here. You're going to hear from them. A bunch of folks from DOI. Jared Agan, who's the executive director of the National Energy Dominance Council inside the White House, is here, and his team. We got the chairman, John Janovich of the XM Bank, which is a key piece that's here. Development Finance Corporation. We got folks from state, from Commerce. We've got folks from the National Security Council, and many more, I'm sure. But we're here, as was said by Tom in the first introduction. It's the whole of government. Prior U.S. administrations had used the whole of government to try to shut down energy that was reliable, affordable, and secure. The team that's here is to try to make sure that we can achieve, the simplest way to describe energy dominance is that we have energy to allow for prosperity at home, and that we have the ability to sell energy to our friends and allies like all of you across the Pacific, so that you don't have to buy it from adversaries. And maybe they're not an adversary, but maybe you have an alternative source of supply where you've got a secure source of supply that can't be interrupted by a terrorist regime. So that's the whole point. This conference was set up months ago. It was conceived, last year. We held a similar one 2 weeks ago in Washington, D.C., interestingly, at the new Board of Peace building in Washington, D.C. We had over 20 countries. And who were the folks that were the most prominently there? All the leaders and the ministers from Eastern Europe were there. because these are folks that understand. They're in the front lines of what it's like to not have energy security when they were all dependent on buying gas from Russia, and then Russia cut them off. So again, America has an opportunity working with all of our allies to create a more prosperous world and a more secure world if we're together. And that's just not on liquid fuels like oil and gas, but as we work together on technologies to produce more electricity, which we need because we're entering an era where we need more, not less. And then also, nuclear. There's President Trump last year signed 4 executive orders, and during that, we've accelerated the flow of technology investment into nuclear like we haven't seen in decades in our country, and unleashing all kinds of innovation around small modular nuclear. I know we've got breakouts on that. Also, before the recent tensions in the Middle East, everybody in this room, understood the threat we were under from having a single country control 85 to 100% of the processing of the rare earth and critical minerals that are needed if you arrived at this conference, you were using rare earth minerals because you've got a cell phone, you flew on a plane, you probably drove in a car, you stayed in a hotel. It's so embedded in our economy today that even though we just took it for granted, we're touching these every day. And again, in the same way, whether it's a geographic strait in the Middle East or whether it's a control of supply, for us to achieve the full potential on this planet, we've got to have reliable, affordable, and secure, meaning from partners you trust that can deliver and not hold you literally hostage economically around any of these elements. So this is the energy dominance approach that President Trump is taking. And thank goodness we have a leader in President Trump who understands that you cannot separate energy policy from economic security, and you can't separate it from national security. So that's the top line. But I would say, again, we gather it today at a timely and profound moment. It's a moment of importance, perhaps in world history, and we're at the cusp of an incredible transformation. And global energy markets certainly today are being stressed by these large global events, but that makes it even more important that we have the discussions, the dialogues that we're having here today, and not just a dialogue, but we actually translate those dialogues into deals, that there's investments that are being made, partnerships being formed, commitments, because you can't have energy without infrastructure, you can't develop energy without investment. And so this is an opportunity to actually move from talk to action. And some of that action is going to happen because we'll be announcing a number of really significant deals at this conference as well. Let me spend a minute just on AI. It's sort of being buried under the news of the conflict in the Middle East. But when our administration took over, the Trump administration, there was one thing that was on the top of the list, and that was to make sure that Iran could never have a nuclear weapon. It's one thing for countries to have nuclear weapons. It's another one to have one that's held by a regime that would absolutely use that nuclear weapon against their stated enemies. And that is something that we just couldn't have happen. And so obviously been working on that since last June. But separate from that, there was a secondary one, which is in a world of AI, to have one country control all the AI is also a threat to the free world. And so winning the AI arms race is something that we're committed to doing. And you can have the best chips, you can have the best software, you can have all of those things, but this is a race of power generation. And this required in the United States, and it's going to require in some other countries as well, certainly some well-known ones in Europe that have to do a 180-degree turn, because we were in this era of I'll call it climate fantasy, and I don't mean that in a pejorative or ideologic way, but if you're selling all your citizens and the idea about it using the word transition, that would imply that we have something A and we're going to move to B, and those are going to be equivalent. But don't worry, B is going to be cleaner and cheaper, and it turns out that and there's an assumption that when you go from A to B, you're still going to have the same amount of power. The reality, energy reality, which is what Lee and I and Chris Wright and everybody like to talk about, energy reality is the whole thing that was foisted on the world around transition was actually energy subtraction. taking reliable, affordable, and secure energy and replacing it with intermittent, weather-dependent, foreign-sourced, unreliable, and redundant, because you have to keep all the other stuff you had before on the times of the day when the wind is not blowing and the sun is not shining. You have to keep the other stuff. You can't shut it down. You have to have both of those redundancies for those moments not working. So it turns out it's not reliable, it's not secure, and it's not affordable. I mean, just take a look. I'll just share facts. I'm not picking on our friends from Germany, but I think it's well known that in Europe, they were the leader in trying to achieve this energy transition. And they spent close to $500 billion, $500 billion on a transition. And they transitioned to a situation where they produce 20% electricity than they did before, and that's 20% less when the sun is shining and the wind is blowing. So it's 20% less in good conditions. And then the electricity costs 3 times as much. Now, I said I was going to talk about AI, and you're like, oh, you haven't talked about that much yet. AI, it's amazing. We stand here in a place like this and we go like, wow, look at these lights on the stage. Look at the fact that, the homes we heat, the food we cook. I mean, electricity, thank you, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Edison, and everybody that came along, Tesla, anybody else along the way that was involved in harnessing and powering electricity. It was a miracle transformation for our planet to be able to generate electricity. But now, for the first time in human history, that we are able to take electricity and not turn it into light or heat. We can turn it into intelligence. Everybody talks about data centers. They're not a data center in the traditional sense that we've had data centers for decades. Closed loop systems that maybe would manage transactions between a customer and a company, and that was it. But this is GPT, this is general purpose technology. If you're taking electricity and turning it into intelligence, it can be used by anybody. It can be used by defense, it can be used by universities. You could use to have a tutor for every school child in your country. You could cure cancer. It is all these things. It's going to be, software has always been the greatest extension of human capability. And now we have a situation where it is going to move at a speed, and it's moving at a speed that it's hard for anyone to comprehend. I spent 30 years in tech before I ever thought about getting into public service. And during that time, I watched companies, fail to keep up because they couldn't keep up with Moore's law. They couldn't keep up with something that was well understood, that chips were going to get twice as fast every 18 months and produce products at half the cost. I mean, that produces an exponential curve. I mean, there were companies that, there was, and one famously, Kodak, they used to have commercials called the Kodak moment. It meant that they took the perfect picture, their memory for you and your family for years. It was a Kodak moment. Well, then their leadership had a Kodak moment, because they completely even though they helped invent digital photography, they completely underestimated the speed at which it would advance under Moore's law. And you take one of the most iconic brands, best known brands in the world, one of the largest top 30 market cap companies in the world at one time, and then they disappeared. And this will happen again in the world of AI if leaders and countries and companies don't understand. We have people around the world right now that are, including in the United States, that are wanting to ban. They're wanting to ban having AI factories, intelligent factories, in their jurisdiction. This would be like saying, I don't want to have 1 million geniuses move into my neighborhood who are going to pay a lot of property taxes, and are going to help solve every problem we've ever had. But again, there's an undercurrent in free democracies, and I can say with great certainty that part of this is when we're in a global power competition, there are people that don't want us to build AI factories. There are people that will spread misinformation around that. But the one thing for certain we do need more power. And if we don't generate energy addition is what we need, not energy transition, because transition always meant subtraction. Energy addition is what we need. That's part of what this conference is about. We're here to cut deals, work with each other, share technologies, learn from the speakers, and figure out a way to get more energy going in all of our countries, amongst our friends and allies. That's the way we win the AI arms race. That's the way we defeat people that have choke points, geographic choke points, that try to control the world's economy. A small group of terrorists controlling the world's economy, not acceptable. The rest of the world can band together in places like this. So part of my gratitude was to say thank you to all of you for being here, because your presence Your presence absolutely, positively matters. And this forum matters because no country can thrive without abundant, reliable, and affordable power. And we're here as the United States to be that reliable, affordable, and secure partner for you. I'm reminded when I think about Japan, and here we are in Japan. It's 120 million people in a space about twice the size of my home state of North Dakota, which is an energy powerhouse. As a small state, but in the small state that we have, producing, before Biden came along, almost 1.5 million barrels of oil a day, and exporting lots of electricity to all of our neighbors. Alaska, in the Cook Inlet, started shipping LNG to Japan over 50 years ago. There's never been a time, a month, a day, a week when that supply route, which goes down the Aleutian Islands towards Japan, has ever been interrupted. The United States of America has the ability to deliver freedom of navigation and free supplies to folks. And we are, one of the things we're doing under President Trump, Lee was up there with me, with Secretary Wright, we are unleashing the power of Alaska, the Alaska LNG pipeline, and other projects that are going on, expanded Alaska oil development. The Department of Interior has been working day and night with the state of Alaska, with EPA, the Department of Energy, and many others to make sure that we can take full advantage of the incredible energy resources in Alaska to supply that to all of you. And it's not just Japan, it's Korea, it's Thailand, it's the Philippines, it's Taiwan. It's all of the countries that are important partners to us here, but it's also, again, in the audience today, and we'll be stopping at one on the way back. We stopped at Alaska on the way over. We're stopping at Hawaii on the way back. We're also stopping in Guam, where we have large military presence. It's unacceptable to the United States that we would have our friends and neighbors, think of South Korea as a strategic key military partner. If they've got energy security issues, that means we've got energy security issues because of our military partnership that we've had with them that also goes back almost 70 years. So we can't have our own territories, our own citizens, or our COFA states, or our own states like Hawaii be dependent on imported foreign oil from the Middle East. That's the case right now. That is absolutely the case. And so part of energy dominance is making sure that we don't take our eyes off the Pacific allies, which are so important. This region of the world is absolutely so important. One other thing I want to say too is that how we ended up in this position in our country and perhaps in others was when we said, hey, we're going to stop doing mining, we're going to stop doing oil and gas development, we're going to stop doing all this stuff because we're concerned about the environment. The net effect of that, of course, was that all of this activity moved to places that did not have an EPA, didn't have child labor laws, didn't care about the environment. So again, for everybody that anybody that has a concern, or your children, your grandchildren, everybody else, I think one thing they need to know about the United States is that when we do it in the United States, we do it cleaner, safer, smarter than anywhere else in the world. It's a message we're trying to get out to our own citizens, which is if we are the world's largest producer of energy, that is also going to be the best outcome for the environment, and you can count on that. So in closing, I just want to say a couple things on a call to action, which is again, we have an opportunity over the next 2 days to advance historic cooperation around whether it's LNG, grid and port infrastructure, critical mineral development, ensuring the free flow of energy across vital sea lanes, and we've got really no time to waste. I'm excited to watch so many deals that are being signed. Some are already starting to happen. Congratulations, I'll say, to Venture Global last night announcing at the beginning of this conference an $8.6 billion expansion on their LNG. Their leadership team is here today. Anyway, this is just the beginning of a number of things that are going to again help benefit the Pacific, because part of their they were a key part, along with we got Woodside, we have Cheniere, we have all of our top LNG exports. These folks got together after Biden had banned LNG exports, and then President Trump lifted that ban, some of these companies were on track to spend over $20 billion in a short amount of time, providing most of the increase in capacity. And we have effectively displaced 2/3 of the Russian gas in all of Western Europe because of the speed and innovation at which U.S. companies are moving to provide reliable, secure, and affordable energy to our allies. In that kind of movement, by doing that, bringing on that marginal capacity, probably saved Europe 20, 30 billion. I'm just spitballing on that one. Let's get an economist to figure it out. But when you increase the supply and put it out there, it saves your citizens money. It increases your security. We know that energy diplomacy backed up by energy dominance will benefit the prosperity of everybody in your country. That's why these deals are important. It's not just economics. It's about human flourishing. It's about helping everybody reach their potential, which they can't if they don't have access to great energy. So American energy, it will remain, your most dependable, most responsible, and most strategic choice as we advance peace and prosperity together for all nations. We're grateful to have you all here, excited to be spending time with you, and excited to be witness to deals that are getting done here, and then also in the future, knowing that deals started here because of the relationships you've made. So I would challenge all of you, if you're not on stage signing a deal, there are people in the room that probably would want to sign one with you. So get ready to make sure that you're talking to somebody more than the people you came with, because this is a group of people here that can really change the direction of energy in the entire Indo-Pacific area. That's my challenge to all of you. Let's go out, let's get it done, and let's do it for all of the people that we work for. Let's do it for the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hardy, Minister Akazawa, and Secretary Bergen. Now, I know all the distinguished guests in government and private sector are very excited to be part of this wonderful opportunity for productive interaction among trusted allies. So let's get started. Our first plenary panel will focus on reliable energy for Indo-Pacific growth and security, and will examine how reliable, dispatchable energy underpins economic growth, technological leadership, and national security across the Indo-Pacific region. And now we have all the panelists and our moderator, Audrey Robertson, Assistant Secretary at the United States Department of Energy. Ms. Robertson leads the Department of Energy Office of Critical Minerals and Energy Innovation, where she oversees one of the largest energy research and development portfolios in the United States. So, Assistant Secretary Robertson, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for being here. My name is Audrey Robertson. I'm the Assistant Secretary of Energy. That was a nice, warm introduction. I'm honored to help kick off the discussion at the Indo-Pacific Energy Ministerial Business Forum. And the topic of our panel is how reliable, dispatchable energy underpins growth, economic, and national security. As we know, energy is the enabler of everything we do. Energy is not a sector of the economy. It is the sector that enables all of our economies. Energy is life, indeed. This panel could not be more timely. Industrial growth, electrification, the rise of AI, and growing manufacturing are driving electricity and energy demand across the region and around the world. Governments and businesses must act strategically to ensure that they can meet this new demand and that the energy they provide is reliable, affordable, and secure, especially secure in this moment. The panel will cover the role of different energy sources and the constituent supply chains in meeting rising energy demand across the region. I'd like to kick off the panel by having each of my panelists introduce themselves. Pelagie, I'd turn it over to you first.
Well, thank you, Audrey. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. I am Balaji Krishnamurthy. I lead Chevron's business in Australia. Chevron is one of the largest global energy companies. We have a footprint across the entire value chain, upstream, midstream, downstream, selling crude oil, gas, natural gas, LNG, and refined products. In Australia, we have two very large LNG developments that contribute nearly 6.5% of the global LNG to the market. And together with our position in United States and Africa, we are proud to be providing one of the leading energy sources supply into Indo-Pacific region, particularly Japan. And it's a really important conversation we are having here today. So I want to thank the US government and the Japanese government for organizing this panel. So look forward to the conversation.
Good morning, Ohio gozaimasu. My name is Daniel Lippman. I go by Dan. I have the responsibility for Westinghouse's global new reactors business, with taking care of those transactions. Westinghouse, for those of you that don't know, has been purely in nuclear energy for quite some time, and involved since the very beginning of the nuclear age. And we have very significant activities ongoing, of course, in the US, Europe, and in the Indo-Pacific region. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Robertson. Thank you to the Japanese METI, US DOE, and US TDA for convening this gathering of the leaders that are before me. Thank you, Excellencies. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Stephen Kobos, Accelerate Energy. We're a US-based LNG infrastructure company. We focus on the downstream. We have all kinds of assets that help get LNG into markets that have never had it, or markets that wish to expand. Those vary from our FSRUs, or floating terminals, which have about 55 million tons of regas capacity, which are deployed globally, LATAM, Caribbean, Europe, Middle East, South, and Southeast Asia. Also, power plants providing pull-through. We even truck LNG. We'll do whatever you need to get it to your doorstep and in your market and open up your market. We like to think that our business, simply put, is energy security, and we can get into that discussion further. I know energy security is front and center with everyone's minds here. We have two assets in the Gulf, Persian Gulf, that are currently providing energy security for our clients there, and obviously the safe and well-being of our men and women of our crew are front of mind for me. But we are doing what we do every single day, and that's providing reliable security for countries.
Good morning, everyone, and mabuhay. I'm Joby Bacordo of the Philippines Department of Energy. Among the more important tasks that I'm given as a department undersecretary is as the co-chairperson of the Nuclear Energy Program Coordinating Committee of the department. And also, I'm the focal person of the department in ensuring the development of offshore wind ports. I am also the focal person for Bangsamoro government concerns, among others. Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you for those introductions. Let's jump right in. Given the activities over the last several weeks, hydrocarbons have been obviously a focus of conversation, a focus of major attention around the world. I'd like to turn to our two panelists in the hydrocarbon world, Balaji and Stephen. Could you give us some perspective on how you see the events in the Middle East?
I'm happy to start. Similar to many in the room, we are monitoring the situation very closely as it continues to remain very volatile. In situations like this, our first and foremost priority is the people that we have in the region. We have a workforce in a dozen or so countries in that region, and we're working with local governments to protect our people, the assets that we operate, and the local communities in which we live. This region, the Middle East region, supplies a significant portion of the global energy supply today. Nearly 20% of the LNG comes from Qatar, and another 20% roughly or so on the crude oil side comes from the same region. So it is, as expected, there is a significant concerns around energy supply, energy security in rest of the globe. It just shows how interconnected we are as a market, particularly from an energy market perspective. And here we are in the Indo-Pacific region. It's home to 2/3 of the world's population, home to some of the vibrant and fastest growing economies in the world. And unfortunately, this region, relatively speaking, is scarce in having energy resources within the country's borders. So by definition, it makes these countries depend on others, trusted allies, to provide that energy source to meet the basic needs of people and the economy here. And to me, it underscores the importance of energy abundance. I know Secretary Burgum talked about that at length in his opening remarks. We need to prioritize investing in energy to create energy abundance, not just for a particular nation's prosperity, but also for shared prosperity and mutual gain. We need to invest in diverse sources of energy so that we have the energy security that comes from diversity. And we also need to work to protect the value chains and the critical supply chains that are critical for those energy infrastructure.
Thank you, Balaji. Stephen, what are your thoughts on the Indo-Pacific?
Well, you bet the interrelationship with the Middle East is front of mind. And frankly, Accelerate's been in the region there since we opened up Kuwait to LNG imports back in 2008. So it is an important region, and we are seeing knock-on effects, obviously. But this is a group of leaders out here. You are thinking about what comes next. You are focused on strategy. We will get through the tactical adjustments that will come over the next few weeks. And I do believe this is people of the world, all over the world. LNG is a unique commodity. You're looking at something that is going to expand by 50%, let's call it, over the next 5 years. An unprecedented expansion. So if we look past the near-term horizon, the question you have to ask yourself in the Indo-Pacific is, how are you going to access that wave of abundance and affordability? And what we've seen as we've built out energy security for people, the beautiful thing about LNG, it's so flexible. You are not dependent upon a single neighbor and a pipe from that neighbor. We're in Finland. I know it's not in the Indo-Pacific, but when its pipeline, the Baltic Connector, was severed, their only backup nat gas for the winter of 23-24 was Accelerate Energy's floating terminal. So you must find a way to diversify from unreliable partners, unreliable neighbors. Some people have different needs in the region. There's a lot of need for baseline energy. It's not a question of which molecule to dispatch next. In many of the emerging markets which we serve, it's most critical that they get that baseline energy. LNG is great for that, but LNG is also great for a more developed market as you go down the road, and you need backup, and you need plan B, and you need plan C. And that could be because you're a hydroelectric dominated country and you face drought. That could be an unreliable neighbor by pipeline. But LNG is this marvelous tool that is coming with this outstanding abundance. And you should all be challenging yourself as to how to access that in the most effective manner. But mainly because energy security at the end of the day is survival.
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate it. So I'd like to turn to you, Jovi. The Philippines has projected a tripling of energy demand by 2040. You are also the chair of the ASEAN region, which is projecting a quadrupling. Can you speak to us about how you're thinking both the region and your country are going to meet that demand.
Thank you, Audrey. The Philippines recognizes that the energy demand will at least triple by 2040 in light of economies expanding, populations growing, and the deepening of electrification. Under the Philippine Energy Plan of 2023 to 2050, we have a three-pronged strategy. That is first, the accelerating of the RE deployment, diversifying the energy mix, and also strengthening the regional cooperation. On accelerating the RE deployment, in our Philippine Energy Plan, our intent is to increase the RE share in the power generation mix to 35% by 2030 and 50% by 2040. But first, in order to achieve this, we have to scale up RE through competitive procurement mechanisms like the Green Energy Program. This policy enables the rapid deployment of solar, wind, and hydro, and geothermal, while maintaining cost competitiveness in the power sector. We have already completed 4 successful GEA programs starting from 2022 to 2025, which generated 22.2 gigawatts. For the period 2026 to 2035, we are looking at an additional in this 10-year program of the Green Energy Program, we're looking at 25 gigawatts. So, starting with the Green Energy Auction 5 this third quarter. This is the fixed bottom offshore wind technology. We're looking at 3.3 gigawatts capacity. To enable this accelerated RE, we have strengthened key policy mechanisms like enabling 100% foreign ownership for RE technologies. The second is diversifying the energy mix. The present power generation mix of the country is dominated by coal at about 60%. For our clean energy scenarios 1 and 2, we are introducing offshore wind. We are looking at offshore wind by 2028 and also waste to energy technology by 2028. None of these are existent in the country now. And we're also looking at nuclear energy by 2032. So for offshore wind, currently we have 91 offshore wind energy service contracts with a potential of 68.5 gigawatts. On strengthening regional cooperation, this year, the Philippines is the ASEAN chair. We are prioritizing stronger collaboration through the ASEAN Power Grid, which is a flagship regional initiative to interconnect national power systems via cross-border transmission lines and submarine cables. Under the Philippine chairship, we are advancing the operationalization of this enhanced MOU on the ASEAN Power Grid. So as regional planning progresses, the Philippines is projecting physical interconnection with other ASEAN member states by 2040, with broader regional integration envisioned by 2045. So together, these efforts aim to build a more integrated, resilient, and sustainable ASEAN energy system, capable of meeting the rising demand while ensuring that energy remains secure, reliable, and affordable across the region.
Thank you very much. Those are 2 very different ways to look at the challenges in the region, yet there is a third way to meet the energy demand, and obviously nuclear is back on the main stage and a very exciting part of the energy mix, both in the United States and around the world. But it is not without challenges, both capital costs, regulatory hurdles. I'd love to hear, Dan, you talk a little bit about how you at Westinghouse are looking at the Indo-Pacific region and the role nuclear could play at meeting this rising demand.
Sure. And let me first give a shout out to USTDA for the sponsorship of this very, very important event. TDA plays an ongoing critical role in early stage development in many, many countries through their grants and programs. and Secretary, as a member of the administration, thank you and the rest of your colleagues throughout the administration for what they're doing for nuclear. I've been in this industry a very long, like very, very long time. And I've never seen an administration lean in the way it is on nuclear technology. And that segues to your question, because what do we need to do in the industry? And when I say we, I want to be clear. It's not just Westinghouse. In the audience here, there's at least 3 different SMR vendors. There is at least 1 or 2 micro reactor vendors that I've run into here. So what we need to do as an industry is, I'm going to use the term industrialize, okay? We build these plants one at a time, but really the key to the success of nuclear energy is to deploy them at scale. And that's what the administration is giving us the opportunity to do, not just in the continental United States, but through export promotion activities that the administration is engaged in. The Export-Import Bank is critical to all of our companies in the nuclear industry in terms of financing these projects. But our challenge as companies is really to fit together the challenges of supply chain, engineering, and labor force, workforce development. Any one of those fail, we're not going to be successful in what we do. And the Indo-Pacific region is critical because already many of our companies, mine and others out here, rely very heavily on supply chains here in Northeast Asia, whether it's Korea or Japan. India has made changes in its nuclear legislation, I'll call it, where they've entered the mainstream of certain legal norms on liability and so forth. They have tremendous capacity. Many of us are already utilizing Indian resources, technical resources, and are looking at manufacturing. But the key to all of this is, how do we deploy? How do we get a handle on overnight capital costs? Because these projects, once they're built, are money makers, and they run like tops. But the key is to get them built successfully, quickly, and safely. And we need this partnership in this region to help us to do that.
That's great, Dan. And I'd actually like to jump back to Jovi, because you talked a lot about renewable energy as part of the strategy. The majority of the Philippines is powered by coal today. Natural gas and LNG represent a medium-term opportunity, as does civil nuclear. Can you speak to how LNG and civil nuclear could play a role?
Right. Thank you again, Audrey. Under the Philippine Energy Plan 2023 to 2050, the Philippines recognizes that both the LNG and the civil nuclear energy as important components of a diversified and secure energy mix. On LNG, it is we consider it as a transition fuel that supports a shift towards RE, while ensuring a stable and reliable power supply during the transition period. The development of LNG infrastructure will supplement the country's domestic natural gas supply from the Malampaya gas field, which will operate until 2039. Natural gas will help ensure sufficient power supply, while RE gradually increases its share in the energy mix. In short and simple language, we need LNG because most of these RE technologies are of the variable variety. So right now we have 2 operational LNG terminals, both located in Batangas, that is in Luzon. The first gen LNG terminal supplies gas to 4 gas-fired power plants. The terminal has a regasification capacity of about 5 million metric tons per annum. And the second is the Linseed Field FSU and onshore regasification terminal, which supplies gas to 2 gas-fired power plants. In addition to LNG terminals are planned in Bataan for 2028 and 2030. For the civil nuclear energy, the Philippines is advancing the development of civil nuclear energy as a medium to long-term option to ensure energy security, provide reliable and low carbon baseload power and low carbon energy transition. We are targeting the commissioning of our first nuclear plant by 2032 with projected capacities of 1.2 gigawatts by 2032, 2.4 gigawatts by 2035, and 4.8 gigawatts by 2050. So that is a very modest target, but I believe that we can do more. The Philippines is also strengthening its nuclear governance and regulatory framework. A law has been passed to creating the PhilAtom, which will serve as the country's independent nuclear regulatory body responsible for safety oversight and licensing. Likewise, the department came up with a department circular, the framework for the integration of nuclear energy in the country's generation mix. The policy designates the first nuclear power plant as a pioneer project, exempting it from the usual competitive selection process and granting fast-track permitting to help address the large upfront capital. So ultimately, the civil nuclear power can provide reliable baseload capacity that supports grid stability. In the context of the current global supply chain disruptions and energy market volatility, both LNG and nuclear energy are viewed as strategic investments that enhance energy security, system resilience, and fuel diversification, complementing the country's broader transition towards a cleaner and more sustainable energy system.
Thank you. As we talk about LNG, I'd love to jump back to our two panelists on LNG. Stephen, can I start with you? We just heard a perspective on LNG and how it could help the Philippines as a more of a bridge, if I heard you correctly. But what role do you see in long term for U.S. LNG to be a partner and enabler in the region? I'd love your comments, and then I'd love to hear from Balaji as well.
Sure. One person's destination is another person's bridge. I tend to think it's a destination, but I also like whenever Secretary Burgum often speaks about energy addition, not energy transition. And let's face it, much of the Indo-Pacific, while I love the cool weather in Tokyo, and I'm glad I brought a coat, but much of the Indo-Pacific is warm. They need air conditioning fully as much as America does. They're entitled to air conditioning. It's AC, it's also AI in many of these countries. And if you want AC and you want AI, it's going to have to be energy addition. And if it is energy addition, then something that can scale, it can be baseload, can be dispatched as backstop, it can be a backstop to intermittent renewables, whether that's drought in a hydroelectric country or a dark lull in a country with solar or wind. But unreliable energy is not energy security. It's not national security. That's really why we're here today. We're all wrestling with that. What is energy security? It's reliable energy security. Reliable energy is energy security. And this wave that's coming in large part from the United States is going to allow the diversification that the region needs to meet these needs for all of their ambitions. And I was in India a month ago when Prime Minister Modi was laying out, again, his ambition to get from 6% to 15% nat gas. They're building out the pipeline network in a way that I find impressive. They're taking the steps that they need. So if you are going to be this, if you're going to serve, if you're going to provide, and Minister Singh Puri there, he he did say energy security is survival. LNG and US LNG is a critical part of that, and we want to help people that don't have access to that coming wave to do it.
As affordable as coffee or biscuits? Now with 0% GST, health insurance is more affordable than ever. Starting at just rupees 28 a day, you can get your whole family covered. So why spend on only small things when you can invest in the biggest asset you have, your health? Get ACO Health Insurance now.
Well,
Yeah, first I'll start by agreeing with Stephen wholeheartedly on this is very much an energy addition story. I think we all have misinterpreted energy transition to be replacement, which the world hasn't really seen. I only see the energy demand continuing to grow, population, quality of life, now turning electrons into knowledge through AI, all of these things. The basic foundation is energy, and we just can't ignore that fact. First, on the US, it's pretty incredible how the administration is leaning into, you talked about, Dan, leaning into nuclear, but they're leaning into all sources of energy, all natural resources. I do think there is something here for other countries that have the same natural resources, the blessing of the natural resources, energy resources within their borders. I think it shows that when we lean into those advantages, it's not only good for their own country, but it's also good for shared prosperity. So that is something we need to do. Australia has been a long-term, reliable supplier for this Asia-Pacific region. Certainly, some of the ministerial colleagues, I saw Minister Madeleine King here recently, and Premier Rajakur from Western Australia, they completely recognize and acknowledge how important a role that Australia plays in energy security in the Indo-Pacific region. So I want to really thank them for their leadership and pragmatic approach. Governments really fundamentally need to do three things, Audrey, in my view. It starts with what US is doing, which is leaning into the energy advantage. Second is setting that long-term policy environment so investments can flow into energy. Energy business, as many of you here know, it's a long-term business. It's longer than any election cycle in any country. So we need to have that long-term stability. And finally, everywhere we have this conversation, permitting and regulatory reform is always a friction point. How do we unlock that, create a streamlined regulatory environment? We do need good regulations, but we need balanced regulations that balances a strong environmental standard with pro-development policies, and that's how we can get better.
oh, I completely agree with you on that. I'd love to turn back to nuclear, Dan, and talk a little bit about the reinvigoration of nuclear across the world has led to SMRs. Can you talk a little bit about Westinghouse?
Sure. That, and actually, I'll tie together a couple of things here. I think Stephen is spot on. There is this confluence, this nexus of financial capital, whether it's private or government, computing power, and the electricity that's needed to power it all. I mentioned to Giovanni, we were waiting there, and I told you I'd been around a long time. I worked in the Philippines, and in 1985 worked on the Bataan nuclear power project, which got finished and never put into operation. And the Philippines is a great example here of what we're all talking about, and it segues, Secretary, to your question, which is, well, what technology do you choose? So the Philippines is able to deploy, or has the ability to deploy, multiple technologies and different types of nuclear technologies. So there's room for large gigawatt-sized plants, but the dispersion of the grid in the archipelago means that in certain places only micro reactors or only SMRs are going to work. So I don't feel I compete as Westinghouse with other technologies. I think we need them all. I'll say large or small, we need them all, okay? I think that's pithy but true. And because customers know, as they study their grids, they study their industrial installations, they study their national security installations, what they need, and they will guide the market into the appropriate application of it. So if we're going to, and your first question, Secretary, was, well, what about this growth that the IAEA and the OECD are projecting? Man, you need everything. You need everything you have from a nuclear technology perspective and a non-nuclear technology perspective to meet those goals.
Excuse me, sorry, I'm getting over a cold here. I agree on needing everything, but how do governments prioritize? And everyone here obviously works across regions, across governments, and in very different fuel sources. Balaji, would you start and just give us a sense of how you work with governments in this region? And I'd love to hear from all the panelists on this topic.
Yeah, I think from a government policy perspective, if you are in a resource-rich nation that is providing energy for yourself as well as your trusted trading partners, you have to prioritize investing in energy over the long run and creating that environment that I talked about earlier, the long-term policy setting that allows that investment to flow freely into it. If you're an energy consuming nation like Philippines, Japan, and by the way, Japan, in my view, role models a long-term thinking, strategic vision. The projects that we have in Australia, we spent $80+ billion Aussie dollars to bring those 5 LNG trains online. That couldn't have been possible without Japanese government and the buyers, many of them here in the room, not having that strategic vision to, this is 25 years ago, underwriting those projects both as partners and customers. So that's what we need from governments, is that long-term vision to invest in different sources of energy and investing in technology and create a level playing field, not pick winners and losers, so that we can let the best solutions compete.
Long-term vision is key. Dan, do you have anything to add about how, Westinghouse, obviously nameplate in nuclear energy around the world, working with countries and governments, how do you see that?
Right. And I think you use the term governments, plural, and that's important. As a Pacific nation, if you look at the United States and you look at the structure of the industry, the electricity industry in the United States, it's dominated by investor-owned utilities. That is not the case. It is the case in Japan. It is not the case in most other places in which Westinghouse operates. So you're dealing with home governments, host governments, and our own government. And I think as well as the customer, whoever's going to deploy the technology, which in this region are largely state-owned enterprises. So I earlier in one of my answers to the earlier question, I'm a big believer in partnerships. It's a public-private partnership with the host government and our own government, just like we're doing here, and partnerships in the supply chains, particularly, and in Westinghouse's case, where we have two great owners, Cameco and Brookfield, that supply uranium product, and on the one hand, and capital on the other. It's really getting a whole of government and whole of industry approach here. And I think that's the same with my colleagues out there too.
Thank you, Dan. Stephen, obviously you have a product that can, and a service that works with any nation. Could you talk a little bit about, just briefly, we're a little short on time, could you talk about how governments help prioritize that?
We find, especially for a market that has never had LNG, you have to work collaboratively with the government, because it's just, anytime something's new, there's no regulatory, tax, cabotage. I mean, it's many of the same things that always come up. So you've seen it a bunch of different times, and you roll up your sleeves and you work with them to help bring in this commodity. So, but I would say we are a unique point in time with this commodity, and you guys need to, you leaders out there need to figure out a way to get infra in place to access it.
Thank you. And I'd like to close our panel out with some comments from Jovi on how, as a Department of Energy, the Undersecretary, how do you work with not just LNG, and you had mentioned renewables, but also nuclear. How do you prioritize those for the Philippines, and how do you help other governments in the ASEAN region prioritize?
While we are embarking on the increasing RE, we recognize that we cannot do away with the LNG just like that. We have considered it as a transition fuel. As a matter of fact, we are inviting foreign investors to come up with more, if they can have more LNG facilities in the country. And most of the RE technology that we have now are solar and wind. These are variable RE. And in order to stabilize the grid, we need LNG. So LNG will be there for the medium to the long term.
Well, we have some very different perspectives and some very valuable insights, both from the producer side, the nuclear side, and the government side that are critical to the region. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on this panel today. Thank you all for your attention and for hosting this event. We're on to the next panel. Thank you.
We'll be having our first deal signing shortly. Please wait until our stage is ready. So now, thank you very much, Assistant Secretary Robertson and panelists, for such an insightful discussion. We now have the first of many exciting deals to be announced here. It's my great pleasure to bring back to the stage Secretary Doug Burgum and as well as Minister Akazawa for your remarks.
Good morning. In my remarks this morning, we talked about that we're going to sign a lot of deals here today. This is the first wave of those. The deals that are announced here are all either between government to government, between the United States and Japan, or between private sector companies from either country with other private sector companies with agencies. They'll describe each of these deals before the signing, but I'm thrilled to have these two amazing Japanese leaders with me here as part of the witnessing of this. And these are the first two of four that we're going to be going. You have an important role to play, which is after the deal gets signed, then you can go wild, crazy with applause, supporting everybody, because there's a lot of work to get to where these deals are done. And these deals in total, again, this is where we start racking up the billions and the billions of dollars of these deals. So we'll start with the first one, and we'll have the description, and then we'll get going with the signing. And if there's other folks that are doing photography, if you can get up here in the front, stay low, that'll be good, so that the rest of the audience can see see the dignitaries and the signers. All right? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now our first deal is Memorandum of Understanding between the U.S. Trade and Development Agency and the Japan Bank for International Cooperation. I want to acknowledge again Tom Hardy, Agency Head of USTDA, as well as Chairman Tadashi Maeda of JBIC. This memorandum formalizes their partnership in strengthening financing support for critical infrastructure in emerging markets, including energy and power infrastructure. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Please proceed. And now the second deal is a memorandum of understanding between Haltech International, Mitsubishi Electric, and Hyundai Engineering and Construction. We're delighted to have senior executives from all three companies here with us today. The three parties have entered into the MOU to jointly deliver the first 2 units of Haltech's SMR 300 reactor design at the Palisades Energy site in Michigan. The partnership establishes integrated and repeatable pathway that bridges design, licensing, construction, and long-term operation through aligned technical and project execution roles. So we're going to do a photo shoot. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Please proceed. Thank you. And moving on. The third deal is a memorandum of understanding signed between GE Vernova and Hitachi. GE Vernova and Hitachi agreed to collaborate to analyze and advance market development and commercial opportunities for deployment of the BWRX 300 in Southeast Asia. The collaboration includes good faith efforts to support resilient and diversified supply chain by exploring opportunities to incorporate qualified Japanese suppliers into small modular reactor projects. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we're going to do a photo shoot. Okay. Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Please return to your seat. Now, our fourth deal is a deal between Japan's Energy for a New Era, JERA, Mitsui, and CF Industries. We welcome their senior executives to the IPEM main stage here today. This project is for the construction of Blue Point, a blue ammonia production facility in Louisiana, scheduled to begin operations in 2029, which will supply blue ammonia to Japan. Gentlemen, if you please. Okay, so we'll be doing a photo shoot. Okay. All right, thank you very much and congratulations. Thank you very much. Please return to your seat. Thank you very much. So we will now be changing our stage layout, so please wait until we're ready. Okay, thank you very much for your patience. And once again, thank you to all the US-Japan deal participants. And now for our second plenary panel, Securing Energy Supply Chains and Infrastructure. In this discussion, panelists will highlight the diversification of energy and mineral supply chains, expanding port capacity and storage, strengthening grid resilience, and strong cooperation among trusted partners. Our moderator is Jared Egan, Executive Director of the National Energy Dominance Council, who will introduce the panel. The Honorable Jared Egan serves as a Deputy Assistant to the President and Executive Director of the National Energy Dominance Council at the White House. Mr. Egan has over 20 years of unique experience in federal government, media relations, international affairs, and politics, and now works at the President's direction to unleash American energy and export U.S. energy to our friends and allies. So I would like to hand over to Mr. Jared Egan and a panel to the stage. If you
Hold on. Hello, thank you. Well, it's great to be here, and thanks everybody for making the trip out here. We have a great panel here. Several ministers and ambassadors and foreign dignitaries come in to see me at the White House. All of these companies come up in the conversation depending on what they're interested in. So you're in for a treat here today. Getting insight from each of these companies is hugely important to everything that's happening in the energy sector around the world. So I'm excited to talk to all of them. Given the time we have, I want to hear from them more than me. And so what I'd like to do is I'm going to first go to Mike Sable from Venture Global. If you haven't seen already, they have kicked off our conference here with a bang. Huge news overnight that we all woke up to. And then even before I came on this panel, I just approved a press release from the Department of Energy for more news around Venture Global. So I want to go straight to Mike, first of all, to talk about, first of all, his news, but also just in general, talk about how you're seeing LNG in the global sphere, especially given everything that's happening in geopolitics right now. So give us a little of your news, but then tell us kind of what you see as overall LNG in the world trade right now.
Thank you, Jared. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, or good morning, maybe good afternoon for me. Thank you to Mehdi and the NEDC for bringing us all together. It's a particularly important time, obviously, to be working together on energy. Yes, this morning or late last night and this morning, we announced a significant expansion of our CP2 project in Louisiana LNG export facility. It is the second phase. Where it's going to add another 10 million tons to the 20 million tons of phase one. We are far enough into construction on it. We expect actually the first and second phase will be producing initial LNG next year. So it'll have a significant impact on global market prices pretty quickly. And thank you also for the uprate in our permitted capacity for our Plaquemines facility, our second facility on the Mississippi River, and also in Louisiana. That'll allow us to add, keep online another 5 or 6 cargoes a month. So it's a material addition to the global markets as well. Obviously there's a tremendous volatility in the markets right now, LNG markets, given the conflict in the Middle East. However, we view that as very short term, and we're tremendously optimistic about the middle and long term strength of the market, liquidity in the market, supply coming online. And we expect long term, very stable liquefaction prices. The industry continues to innovate. For example, when we entered the market to compete to sell our LNG product back in the fourth quarter of 2014, so almost 12 years ago now, the liquefaction fees for 20-year contracts coming out of the US were $3.50 going to $4. Today, they all have a $2 handle on it. So even with tremendous inflation that's occurred over the last 12 years, those liquefaction fees are almost in half, which is amazing. And in addition, the actual commodity supply of the gas itself continues to benefit from significant capital investment. And the cost of Henry Hub index gas in the United States, NYMEX index gas, is lower than when the U.S. began to export LNG. So it's tremendous innovation, capital, energy, human energy going into it. There's going to be a long-term stable supply of LNG from the United States.
Great, thank you, Mike. Let me introduce Dina Volivar, Nuclear Security Environmental at Bechtel. Dina, thanks for being here. Again, same thing I've said before, Bechtel comes up so many times in the meetings I have in Europe, throughout Asia, obviously in the US as well. what I'd love to hear from you is, we've tried to do a lot in the U.S. of streamlining and permitting, but we're trying to knock down as many bottlenecks as possible. As you look at Bechtel's kind of global operation, what are you seeing as any kind of bottlenecks to delivering projects on time?
And all the sponsors on behalf of Bechtel, really happy to be here. Just maybe a little background for those that might not know who Bechtel is. So we're we're an engineering, procurement, and construction company, 128 years of building mega projects across a lot of what we'll be discussing over the next 2 days: transportation, civil, water projects, nuclear, oil and gas, and renewables, and opening and supplying critical minerals, as well as building factories for semiconductors, as well as AI data centers. So, turning to the bottlenecks, I think that the three biggest delays on projects that you see, mega projects, regardless of what they may be across the world at this point, is permitting unpredictability, logistics strain, and then late delivery system involvement. And what I mean by delivery system, that's the technology providers, the designers and the constructors, supply chain and operators, making sure they're involved very early in the planning and project initiation phase. And so if we first turn to what does success look like, because then you can figure out how do you knock down those bottlenecks. It's certainty. So success for these big projects means certainty first. It's a clear permitting pathway that everyone can rely upon. It's bankable cost estimates that are reliable and consistent throughout the course of the execution. It's predictable, visible project pipelines, and I can't stress that one enough, because then what's required is supply chains that keep up. And that means that the supply chains have to be diverse, but they also have to be anchored in areas that matter to execution. That visibility of the pipeline of project is what's going to allow suppliers to actually invest and scale well ahead of need, and making sure that they don't become a bottleneck to execution. I think replication, especially as we're talking about nuclear, getting into replication as an advantage, standardizing designs, modular construction, transferring regulatory frameworks across regions is really critical to making sure that each project in succession goes faster, is more affordable and efficient. And then it's being able to build to scale. So multi-year project pipelines of different technologies require workforce and supply chain to make sure they're going to be successful, giving that early ability for workforce, supply chain, and capital markets to plan ahead, make sure that they knock down any bottlenecks when it comes to actual execution of the project. So really, bottom line, it's whether or not the country wants to build 10 nuclear plants, whether or not it's 10 LNG terminals or transmission corridors. Success is the early identification of the need, reliability in regulations and stability there, early integration of the team that's going to deliver the project, and then repeatability to be able to improve project after project.
That's great. Thank you. Dinkar Bhatia, Chief Commercial Officer for X Energy. Thanks for being here. X Energy was a huge part of the state visit we did at the UK. So it's exciting to see you here on the completely other side of the world. But thanks for all you did around the state visit with the president to the UK. But tell me a little bit about small modular reactors. Comes up a lot. Some people know it very well, others don't. And there's some questions I get all the time of, how's this going to change the market? Who are the first movers? Maybe talk me through how you see small modular reactors kind of changing the way countries that look at the nuclear industry.
Yeah, thank you. And good morning, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to kind of share our story. I would start out by saying, when we think about SMRs, usually people think of small as the key word. We think about it as scalable and standardization. And so you talked a little bit about what that means in terms of making sure projects can come to market. Large piece of this is making sure that when we think about cost to build, thinking about technology that's safe, thinking about all the fuel form and other things that go into it, what actually can be repeatable. So our first three projects that people are aware of, I'll talk about real briefly. Our first project is actually with Dow Chemical. It's a co-located cogen facility in Cedar, Texas. When we get our license this year from the NRC on expedited basis, it's going to show how nuclear can apply to a market that just hasn't been applied to before, which is industrial application. That's applicable globally. Wherever there's any sort of industrial processes that need high temperature steam, it will change the way we think about sort of where steam comes from. Our second project is about scale. Amazon is our not only investor in our company, but they are investor in that project. And what they realized after 18 months of looking at various different technologies is what is scalable and what can actually meet hyperscaler demand, not only domestically in the US, but globally. And so that project is going to be a 960 megawatt project. We'll start at 320 megawatts and scale 2 more times. And it will address what is a key issue from an energy security and demand perspective. And so we're showing scale in that level. And then, as you mentioned, the UK and Centrica, it shows from a utility perspective, utilities can find a way that they can work and get confidence that over the 6 gigawatt mandate that Centrica signed with us, that they can actually repeat and show that it is something that is affordable long term. As it pertains to here, where we think about it is, one, partnership on supply chain. We've already announced publicly some very important partnerships, not only with manufacturing of reactor pressure vessels and steam generators, both in Korea and also in Japan now. And also when it comes to graphite and also steam generator tubes, ultimately all these components are long lead time items. As we were talking about construction costs and execution, we need to get ahead of it. And this is where, from a Asia perspective, clearly there's a lot of history around nuclear manufacturing support, and we're partnering with some of the key players out here to try to bring that to scale. And that's going to help with execution, not only in our projects, but as we think about expansion into Asia, in terms of projects that we're talking about in Southeast Asia and some other spots, how do SMRs are no longer a small module, it's a scalable solution globally.
That's great. Thanks. All right, Scott Nolan, one of the big game changers, at least from my perspective in nuclear, was when the president signed 4 executive orders last year, and General Matter was in the Oval when he did it. And so, Scott, would love your perspective just on what has happened to the industry since then, but also, you know, before President Trump, there was a lot of offshoring of processing key materials. What is it going to take us to kind of rebuild the capabilities within a trusted supply chain when it comes to the nuclear industry?
Yeah, yeah, thank you. For those not familiar, General Matter is an American uranium enrichment company making both low enriched uranium for existing reactors and HALEU, the 20% enriched fuel for advanced reactors. To your question on the Oval Office executive order signings, those 4 were some of the most positive pro-nuclear, policy changes in decades, I think. There was one in the NRC to really focus on not just the risks, but the benefits of nuclear. One to create a DOE pathway, one to create a DOD pathway, and then just general strengthening of the supply chain. On the supply chain side, sorry, the way I've always thought about it is, we're in a commodity market, we're making a fuel, we're doing a commodity service, it's called enrichment, it's sold in units of enrichment. And so if you want to not have that go offshore, you simply need it to be competitive. And for commodities, it's all about cost competition. And so, there's really 2 dimensions. It's what's your technology and what's your policy. On the tech side, I think this is really the domain of the private industry. Maybe decades ago, it was something governments focused on. They did the tech development, they did national labs. But these days, we've seen a lot of companies proving that you can do great tech development in the private industry. You've got SpaceX doing this in space launch, bringing the cost down dramatically. You've got Palantir doing this in what was formerly government software. And so now we're seeing this happen in energy. And so I think there's that private side of really trying to
bring down the cost of the technology, whether that's CapEx or OpEx, and for us, it's really both. Then the second piece is just policy, trade policy, domestic policy. And I think what you need to do there really depends on whether this offshoring or this commodity business is really CapEx driven or OpEx driven. I think if it's OpEx driven, it's the type of things Secretary Bergen was talking about earlier. It's OpEx, it's going to be energy, it's going to be the cost of thermal energy, electricity, and that just gets back to the grid. Like, what are you doing around energy policy? What is your domestic policy that's going to bring down cost? You know, there's the example of Germany adding too many constraints, ending up with 20% less power at 3 times the cost per kilowatt hour. That's not going to work for industries that are OpEx dominant. For ones that are CapEx dominant, I think it's a whole different set of levers, and it's around timing of capital, cost of capital, and even aggregating demand to justify a new CapEx investment. But yeah, maybe we get into those a little bit later. But that's how I think about it generally, really tech versus trade policy. And then within the policy, it's really, is it CapEx focused or OpEx focused?
Yeah, that's great. Mike, switching back to you and LNG. So let's dive down a little into the Indo-Pacific and focus on that. What's the infrastructure like here in the Indo-Pacific? What are investments needed on infrastructure, especially when it comes to LNG? And you know, from the government side, how could we maybe help on the infrastructure?
Sure. I think we're in again, to strike a positive tone, we're in a unique moment here where there's alignment of government support, regulatory support, capital, and fuel supply to grow the deliverability of increasing volumes of gas into Asia. The investments are continuing and growing in regas capacity, and so there's more to be done there. Those investments are well supported from the private side. They need permit support, and so efficiency and of delivery of those permits will just accelerate deployment. You obviously need pipeline interconnects. You need pipelines built, and then the load will come. I think, and Secretary Bergen mentioned talked about the transition conversation that's been going on the last few years. In the case of natural gas, all the engineering has been achieved that allows the delivery, of 6, 7, 8 cent kilowatt hour electricity anywhere in the world. And historically, that's been consumed at 100% of capacity. And it's an extremely optimistic thing that will support the growth in manufacturing of intelligence, but the basic demands of a growing global middle class and entrepreneurialism. And so I think probably as I look at the supply chain after friction of the pace of permits is probably how fast the world can build gas turbines, and the people to install and build them, like Bechtel.
Great, thanks, Mike. So Dina, I like to use the term Trump speed of moving quickly on infrastructure, but you do face sometimes labor issues, equipment, as Mike just noted, skilled labor in particular. I mean, so what are some of the constraints you see, and then what maybe some of the advantages of the Indo-Pacific?
Yeah. So when I think about, so all the things that you noted obviously are critical to reliable execution and being able to execute at speed and to the schedule and cost as estimated. But I don't really see those as constraints. What I see as the constraint is the need for early decisions and early investments that signal to the workforce, the people that create and generate the workforce, to build these facilities, and then also to the supply chain of what's coming and when, so then they can make decisions on investment into greater capacity. So it's really the lack of making decisions early enough and being able to note to those that must actually execute what's coming when and how sustained is that load. Because that will pace the ability to execute at speed. But we have seen it stand up. I mean, we've got a number of LNG projects going on in the U.S. Gulf Coast at this point in time, 20,000 craft professionals deployed, all the materials and equipment getting there well in advance of need to construction, all because we knew well enough in advance to be able to engage, especially when you talk about nuclear, there's a lot of the long lead equipment that needs to come. And the pace of the project execution is really on the availability and the delivery of that equipment. And so getting out in front and making decisions and capital investment early enough to trigger the purchasing of that equipment is incredibly important, such that you know it's coming, you can rely on it, and then get all the construction ready to receive it and to continue forward unencumbered by receipt of material and equipment. So it's really, I think, just lining up and making sure that to be able to achieve these projects with greater efficiency, with standardized schedules, even more efficient schedules, and to cost or better, it's obviously standardizing designs, as we talked about, because then you're building the same thing multiple times, but it's investing early in the decision-making process and in the supply chain releases, and then making sure that you're reaching into the workforce development years in advance, because it does take a number of years to get someone who's entering the workforce as a craft professional to come up to speed. We are investing in a number of training programs, especially when it comes to nuclear specialties, years in advance of need. So my hope is those will not be the pacing, but making those decisions and telegraphing the need early enough will enable the market to respond.
That's great. Dinkar, the supply chain for nuclear fuel can be a complicated one. So talk to me about how do we strengthen that supply chain? What are some of the steps we could do, particularly here in the Indo-Pacific?
So good question. The advantage that we have with our technology is that, because of the trisoform of fuel that we have, effectively by intrinsic nature, it's safe, and it's the first barrier of safety. The disadvantage is that HALEU is not something that's mass produced at this point. So thanks to companies like General Matter, which we're excited about from a development partnership perspective, it's really about how do you take uranium, which is plentiful, to go through the whole conversion, the enrichment, deconversion process to LEU all the way to HALEU. And so thanks to administration support on the investment that's already been happening, and also just in terms of general interest, we believe that we're well ahead of the game. It's just a matter of continued support and continued expansion. What we're doing on our side is owning the fuel fabrication piece of it. So that means we're not depending on somebody else to take the HALEU form and put it into fuel that we need for our reactors. So we already have our first facility. We call it TX1, TRISO-X1, that's in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, that is well advanced in construction and will be fully constructed next year. It just recently received 2 weeks ago the first NRC license for fuel fabrication in decades.